this morning. So welcome again to everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for joining us on this love day this morning. And we are going to be talking about the love of scholarships, right? Those loving the scholarship essays. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But like I said, we're so happy that you joined us for our second monthly virtual coffee break. This is a very informal time for us to come together and just talk about different things. So in a minute, we will kick off our coffee time together with a 5-minute video about Pro Tools that we have from our own Constance Hollingsworth Pierce. And then we are going to pass it over to Devon McCarthy-James, and she's going to talk to folks about scholarship essays and just a few tips on helping your students as they go through them. And then we will have some time at the end just to mention things, questions, celebrations, struggles. You can put it in the chat, whatever you'd like. Do please put in the chat where you're joining us from, so school or county or your role, just so we can say hey to everyone as we go through. So once again, this is our agenda for our second monthly program. I'm April Query. I'm the Assistant Vice President of College Access and Community Outreach at College Foundation in North Carolina. And I'm here. So as you guys have questions, we also have Kate Freeland, who is our Outreach and Marketing Assistant, and she'll be monitoring the chat as well. So if you have questions as you go through or just want to say hi, again, very, very informal time together this morning. Feel free to use the chat and Q&A feature. As we're talking about scholarships this morning, I did want to make sure I put a plug in for NC Scholarship. This is a new sort of consolidated scholarship program that we have in North Carolina. And we have the toolkit that's out there. It really is a very, very good toolkit. And the goal of this scholarship is to say, if your family makes under $80,000 a year, you will likely qualify for this amount if you're going to a community college, and then this amount if you're headed to one of our 16 UNC schools. In the hopes that laying that out nice and early encourages students to know there's money available for them as long as they are thinking about, maybe exploring, talking to you about some type of post-secondary education. I did want to take just a minute and congratulate Chapel Hill High School Student Services. They were the winner of our coffee for the office last month. We really are doing this, guys. So after today, we will randomly pick somebody out to get coffee for their office. So generally, it's your student services office, or if you're coming to us from a community organization, it's going to be your office there, and we will get you coffee one way or the other. So for Chapel Hill High School, we sent a gift card. Just because we weren't going to be right there anytime soon, and you guys needed your caffeine fix. And also, I wanted to remind you that we are recording these, and they have their own playlist on our CFNC YouTube channel, the Virtual Coffee Break. So this will be on there maybe Friday or Monday, so soon. And then also our Brewing Success, so 5 minutes with Pro Tools, has its own playlist as well, in case you just want to take a look at that. And again, if you haven't already, let us know where you are in the state. So I'm going to switch my screen here for a second. We have Constance Hollingsworth Pierce, who is our K-12 Client Services Manager with CFNC Pathways, and she has provided us with another wonderful video to talk a little bit about something new going on with Pro Tools. So I'm going to have her video play. If you can't hear something, throw it in the chat. But I think we are good to go today.
Hi, I'm back. It's Brewing Success 5 minutes with Constance. And this month, I wanted to ask you, did you know that Pro Tools does more than just provide you access to Pro Tools, to all your data, to all your FAFSA information, transcripts, college access? Well, we do. We have a wonderful program that starts in February, ends in May, called Next Step. Next Step is an annual program to help high school juniors and parents take the next step towards their goals after graduation. We supply the information, We want you to give us your students and their parents, just their names, just their information, because what we want to do is help you as educators. Our goal is to collect all the information about their plans for the next step and give it to you. With this program, our key benefits for families, it prompts them to think ahead, provides quick tips and links for all participants, whether they want to do an apprenticeship, military, work, community college, or four-year college. Maybe they said one thing to you, but deep down they wanted to tell you something else. We collect that information for you. Those who enroll in the online program will have the opportunity to receive self-paced guidance and support through concrete action items. For you, the educator, it allows you to provide a self-paced program to students and their parents, aligns with your school's objective to help students succeed. And look, we all know that you need this. It provides actionable data to help you plan and work with students individually. So we have the information. We just need you to sign your school up for our program. Next step. We want you. If you have questions and you want to know more about Next Step, it launches February 19th. We give you the information, provide you the access to the data. It concludes May 31st. If you want to know more, you want our whole little spiel that I did in the last 2 weeks with other educators, then please email me at constance@cfncresources.org. Email me and I'll make sure you receive our webinar. The next thing that we have for you is student enrichment programs. Did you know that we provide this information for students for summer programming? We're working so hard to update our database and have more schools to get involved. But be right here, learn more about student enrichment programs to provide to your students. You can search or refine the search from areas of interest, grade level, overnight stays, student enrichment programs at colleges, that's our universities, our community colleges, independent colleges. We are working to get all that information about student enrichment programs that they can apply to all year long in the summer. We want to be there to serve you and your students. So if you have more information, you can find out about student enrichment programs under Plan Your Future. It's right there waiting for you. So we look forward to making sure that we can serve you. And as you know, we have Pro Tools. Don't forget about Pro Tools Help. It provides so much information that you, as the educator, you can look behind the scenes and learn more about how Pro Tools can be beneficial for you. Thank you so much for listening to me for our 5 minutes this month. Don't forget, we need your help to help you with your juniors. We also have student enrichment plan, and don't forget about Pro Tools Help. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out to me, and I'm Constance Hollingsworth Pierce. We'll see you next month.
For us to just talk a little bit about something related to Pro Tools that I do believe is helpful for all of us. Again, if you have any questions or thoughts related to this or not, throw it in the chat, get your coffee. Next, we are super pleased to have Devon McCarthy-James with us. She is one of two of our 828 regional representatives with College Foundation of North Carolina. She's coming to us this morning from the Asheville area. She has a background in school counseling and is a truly dynamic speaker, and we are so happy to have her talk to us this morning about scholarships. So welcome, Devon.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much, April. So today we're going to talk about scholarships. I'm going to talk about a few things to just as reminders, because I know a lot of you have been doing this for a while, but it never hurts to get a refresher on some things. So hopefully there's some things you're going to get some good tips on and bring into this year's scholarship support. And April mentioned that I've been a school counselor. Before that, I was actually an English teacher. So we're also going to, April, I think we're not looking at the slides anymore. We're looking at an email. Sorry. So, So that's also one way that I've worked with students around scholarship essays, college essays, things like that. So I'm going to talk about some things that I've done to work with students in the past. The first thing I like to talk to students about is about, kind of setting the stage and really making a plan for scholarships. And part of that is asking the questions, right? So these are some of the questions that I talk to students about pretty regularly. The first thing that I like to talk to students about is, are there colleges where where it might make sense to apply because you might be in a good position to receive more scholarships from the institution, right? So there's a term called overmatching. Some of you might be familiar with, but I feel like sometimes students are so focused on getting into the best name college that they possibly can, that sometimes they forget that there might be more financial aid opportunities for them if their GPA or test scores are a little bit above some of those institutions. So I always try to have that conversation. I'm not trying to push them in a direction, but I'm just reminding them that there might be other opportunities and benefits to attending, different kinds of schools. I also, of course, encourage them to talk about, do how does that college work with private scholarships, outside scholarships? Do they stack them on top of institutional aid? Or are they going to say, that's great that you brought that amount of funds in there. We're going to, sort of compensate and take that in and pull out some of our institutional aid. Now, there's a lot of colleges that are stackable, but I think it's worth having those conversations because there are some that will do that. Also, I try to get students to talk to scholarship sponsors, right? So when they're looking at outside scholarships, trying to figure out what's renewable. We know that a lot of local scholarships aren't renewable. Not that that's necessarily a deal breaker, but I just want them to understand what the terms are to know if they're going to have to look for additional funds later down the road when they're in college. Also, are those scholarships designated for specific funds? For instance, if a student qualifies for the next NC, right, and can cover that tuition and fees, if they're applying for a scholarship that only covers tuition and fees, is that money going to be useful to them at that college, right? So, you really want to kind of figure out what exactly each scholarship is going to do for that student, and then I ask them to look at their team, right? Who's on their team in this process? I mean, I know a lot of students who are nervous to ask for help and support, but the students who are really successful in this process overwhelmingly are those that are reaching out to the people that can support them. And I think you all as school counselors know that that's true in most situations in life, right? So I'm trying to make sure that they know who they're going to lean on to help find scholarships. I think we all know that there's some scholarships that are just not well publicized. And so having your family kind of keeping an eye out for things, like for instance, out here we have a scholarship through a pediatric dentist office, right? So you might not know about that, but when you go to the dentist, just saying, hey, we're going to college next year, just having that conversation can maybe invite them to share that opportunity, right? And then of course, who can help me with the actual pieces of the scholarship application? So, who are the trusted people? Now, I don't necessarily think that having students involved in this process is a bad thing. I do think that students can benefit from having adults, look at their essays and things like that. But having close friends that they trust to read those essays and things, I think that can be really helpful as well. They feel more comfortable maybe with those peers to get some of that feedback. So the next thing I want to talk about is scholarship essays specifically. So there's some things that I've done in the past. I was fortunate when I taught English to teach in a state that hadn't yet adopted Common Core standards. So we actually, in all of our senior English classes, began the year with a common, like an essay, a college essay unit, which was great because we worked really hard on these things. And so there's things that I did to help students with this process, because it can be very overwhelming to write scholarship essays, college essays, right, to kind of reveal things about yourself, but in a strategic way, right? So the first thing I always ask students to do is understand that essay prompt. When you're looking at different scholarships, some you absolutely can reuse or tweak in some way what you've done for your college applications, but some have much more specific essays that they want the student to respond to some specific prompt that relates to why they might receive that specific scholarship, right? So they may need to write an entirely new essay, or sometimes I've found that when students try to rewrite a college essay, they don't do a great job of making it its own new essay in a shorter form. So sometimes it is actually easier for them to write an essay from scratch. I've actually asked students to highlight keywords or phrases or write down the keywords or phrases from a prompt so that they have those in front of them when they're writing, and they know exactly some of the things that they need to kind of use to guide that writing. And of course, the sponsor, the scholarship research, right? Now, not all scholarships are going to have a ton of information out there on websites or in social media or on the internet in general, but some will have a bit of information, right? So we just want them to look and see what they can find, right? A little scavenger hunt for scholarships. Sometimes it can be really helpful to look and see who the previous scholarship recipients were, because sometimes they'll give like a little bio, and that can give students a read on, oh, wow, okay, they shared this with that committee. I didn't think that was something that they would care about, but I have something similar, right? So it can really give them a read on what are some of the things that they might want to share. Also, if there's information about the scholarship committee, again, all of this stuff can help inform the writing, even if it doesn't necessarily dictate exactly what they're writing about, it can help inform it. And then finally, sometimes it might be that there's not a whole lot of information about that specific scholarship, but there might be information about similar ones, right? So it doesn't hurt to kind of like look and see, if you're searching that, maybe there's another scholarship that's similar to that one that you can get a little bit more information about that kind of scholarship and what the expectations are. And then, of course, I always recommend reaching out if you have questions, right? So what better way to connect with that scholarship and those people by reaching out to that program sponsor, whoever that is, to ask questions. I recommend that students practice that before they do it, though. If they can practice that conversation with an adult, with a counselor, with a parent, it can make that go a lot more smoothly because they feel confident that they already have voiced out loud what they want to say. Right. So once you get to this point, right, then we're sort of digging into the essays themselves. Okay. And so I would love to hear, like, if you all have any things that you've done to help students, actually write these essays, like if you do scholarship workshops or anything like this, we would love to get, use the hive mind to get ideas, because I think this can be really a tricky balance between being really supportive of students and their their unique experiences that they want to share, and helping them to make that sort of a rigorous essay, right? Because if it's a personal topic, it sometimes can be tough, right? So the first thing I really like to do to kind of soften the experience is oftentimes I actually have students either make a list of their personal qualities, their positive qualities, or I will give them a list of qualities, like just like a full page of things, and they can circle different qualities that they feel apply to them. Now, after I have them do that, then I have them think about or even turn to a friend, depending on what the context is, and or like think about what a parent would say about them, what a best friend would say about them, because I think sometimes students really have trouble seeing things in themselves that are their strengths. So if you have an opportunity to have like a small group and you have some friends, like what would you say about that student? Like what should they add to that list? Because I think that can really give them an idea of some qualities that they want to show in their writing, but B, it's a great way to start this process by reminding them of how awesome they are and all the good things that they're bringing to the world, regardless of if they get that one specific scholarship, right? So I like that as a way to kind of kick things off. The next thing is, of course, connecting to a compelling story, right? So the next thing I would often ask students to do is like, so what are some things that, review your resume or your brag sheet or whatever it is, and try to connect the dots between your qualities that you've listed and your resume or your activity list. There may be things that are off of that too, right? It doesn't necessarily have to come from that list, but it's a good opportunity to start brainstorming if you have both of those in front of you, right? So what are some stories? What are some examples of where you showed those things? Now, if it's a shorter essay, obviously you're not going to be able to go into as much imagery, right? You're not going to be able to use as much flourish, but I still think it's really worth thinking about and talking to students about how do you show your voice, right? How do you show your own authenticity and sincerity, right? Because these are real people who really care about students and supporting them. And so reminding them that this is a very friendly audience and they want to see, of course, that you can write well, but they also want to see that you are passionate about something. They want to hear your perspective, right? So it should not, of course, be a list of resume items. So something that gives an indication of the student's perspective, some indication of a story in there is going to be important, even in like a paragraph essay, okay? The biggest thing I'm really concerned about is students using AI these days, right? And AI is it's absolutely clear that that is not an authentic voice, right? So if they're using AI, I don't know if y'all have ever played with it, but it's pretty clear that it is computer generated. And so I would absolutely recommend they stay away from that because that's going to detract from their essay rather than add to it. And then once they have sort of the bulk of it, like they've decided what the topic is, they've kind of written the key parts, then I ask students to start thinking about tweaking some of the flourishes or making sure they have some of these things, right? So don't forget a hook. A hook can literally be one sentence. It could be a couple of sentences, but it really isn't any more than that. So you just want, even like I said, even in those short essays, if they start with a compelling statement or a personal revelation in those short ones, that can work really well. The personal revelation, like, I still remember when I learned blank, right? Something like that. But if it is a longer essay, they can do a little bit more of an involved hook, right? Either way, you want them to start strong, right? Because that is really, how you get your audience really engaged with your personal tale and your perspective. Sometimes I actually have students write 2 or 3 different styles of a hook, depending on what they feel comfortable with. And it's interesting because sometimes the students think they know what hook they're going to use, but after they try a couple, they find that another one actually works better. And that's a really easy thing to do because it's only a sentence, right? It's only a sentence or two. The other thing I always make sure, and I think this is something that you all probably see a bit, is, are they using some kind of impact statement to conclude, to wrap it up? Again, this can be a sentence or two. But are they explaining the impact of that experience, the meaning of that story? Are they connecting it back to the purpose of the scholarship, right? So if it's a community service-based scholarship and they're trying to talk about the importance in their life of community service, they can connect it back to that meaning after they tell their personal story of what they've done and what that's meant to them. They can kind of do that last sentence to talk about either this is why I really connect with such and such scholarship program, and I believe in forwarding this mission of whatever that is, right? It could be, if I'm able to receive these funds, I can use those to do X, XYZ that relates to the purpose of the scholarship. Whatever it is, they really want to tie it back in so it kind of wraps it in a nice little bow, right? And then, of course, edit, revise, all that good stuff. One of the things that I talk to students about is, yes, of course, use spell check. Of course, use grammar check, but that is not a replacement for a human being reading it, because we all know that sometimes spell check or grammar check does not necessarily understand the context and can miss things, right? So we always want people to be reading that for us. And I really encourage, and I think a lot of students don't do this or they're hesitant to do this, but I really encourage students to read their own writing aloud, whether it's to another person or just to themselves aloud. It can feel a little awkward, I get it, but you can hear errors in your writing that sometimes you can't see, especially if you've already revised it once or twice. Your brain skips ahead sometimes, right? It skips ahead on the sentence because you know what it's supposed to say, but is that what it really says? And so saying it out loud helps you kind of catch some of those things. So I definitely recommend students do that. They can do that before, after other people review it. You can do it multiple times, but I've found in my experience that that really does highlight for students some areas that it's awkward language, some typos, things like that. So some other reminders, I've found that students create a professional scholarship email that's separate, especially if they're applying to a lot of scholarships or like a lot of national things or whatever. That can be really helpful. I mean, some students like to create just a general college financial aid email, and that works if you're not applying to a lot of scholarships outside of your local area. But the reason I say a professional scholarship email could help if they're applying to a lot of scholarships is because some of these free services where they use the scholarship searches, particularly some of the .coms, they create this profile, they get sent, different scholarships that they qualify for, but they also can end up with a bunch of spam from that, right? Because those free services make their money somehow, right, through advertising and such. So I just don't want them to get swamped in some of that stuff, depending on which of those scholarship searches that they possibly sign up for. So that can be a really helpful thing to kind of keep them out of, drowning in spam, basically. Also, recommend to students that they keep applying, right? Sometimes I think that the students overlook those small dollar amounts, or they're like, whatever, it's just $500. But, again, if you only spend a couple of hours applying to scholarships, maybe a few scholarships, and you get one $500 scholarship, $250 an hour is a lot more than I make. I don't know about y'all, but that's a really good rate of return. So reminding students of that periodically. And also, we talked a little bit before about, renewable scholarships. Well, even if it's not renewable, because, some of those local scholarships are just one-offs, they can absolutely keep applying while at college. So, before they leave your sphere and go off into the world, it never hurts to give that reminder. Like, you can keep applying. In fact, I hear from some of the college financial aid offices that they are regularly begging their students to apply for those continuing student scholarships. So definitely, they can find other things when they're there. The other thing I like to mention to students, especially if they're applying to a bunch of scholarships or they plan to, use your tech tools, right? I know a lot of students have G Suite tools like Gmail and Google Calendar and all that, but whatever it is, if they can make a concerted effort to put those deadlines, not just the deadlines in the calendar, because that can sneak up on you, but like maybe an alert a week before that's like, oh, hey, this is coming. If you haven't done anything yet, now's the time, right? So some of that stuff. Or even some of the like, okay, I have deadlines for recommenders. When do I need to have that in place? And so I really think that is a useful skill if you can walk students through some of this in terms of like setting up, like, okay, I have this deadline here. I need them to have that by here. So I need to ask them by here, right? That's a skill. That's a really important organization skill that I think all students can use. So if you can work with students on that, I think that will benefit them in more than just scholarships, right? And then if they set that up and have that on their phone, which most of our students do have smartphones nowadays, if they can enable those push notifications, that's the most effective way to do it, right? Because they're not always checking their email, they're not always checking their calendar. But if it comes up on their phone, that's a different story, right? So definitely encourage them to take advantage of that. I also encourage students, if they're comfortable, now that's a big if they're comfortable, because I know sometimes some of these essays can be very personal and it's not necessarily something they want to share with everybody. But if they are comfortable sharing their essay with the recommenders, just as they would a resume or brag sheet, because it really, again, just like it can have a really great impact on the committee reading the scholarship committee reading the essay, it can also really inspire the recommender, right? Because a list of what they've done, it can be great to help them, but again, there's power of their voice, and I really encourage them, if they feel comfortable, to share that. Now, I think you all know we encourage students to send thank you messages, but one area I find that students often don't follow up is keeping those people updated. They kind of say, okay, thank you, and then kind of move on. But those recommenders, I mean, I have students that I worked with 5 years ago that still, kind of just check in with me, and I've written future letters for them, right? I don't see them every day anymore. I'm not in the school anymore, but I've written other letters while they've been at college to help them get other scholarships, right? So keeping people updated doesn't have to be all the time. Obviously, we all have lives, but just a quick message to be like, hey, I just wanted to let you know what came of this. This is my plan. It doesn't have to be huge. Just kind of a little, here and there update. And then the last thing I did really want to talk about is scholarship interviews. Of course, we like to encourage students to, practice with potential interview questions, things like that. That helps them get that practice. They've said things out loud. And so if anxiety comes into play, they've already got some phrases that they have in their head that they've already used. One thing I really love that I've seen recently in my community here is using interviews as a learning experience, right? So if there is a way to practice interviews, that those kinds of interviews with students, I think that's really valuable. I was on an interview committee for a program out here where the program director actually gave students the option to come in with her to do a practice interview. And then when those students came in for the official interviews, they were so confident and they did a great job, because the goal is not to trick those students, right? It's to help them. Even if they don't get into the program or get the scholarship, they've gained a really useful learning experience, right? So I know we all only have so much RAM, but I love that idea. So I just wanted to put that out there. And finally, here's just some resources for y'all. One resource that I did forget to put on there that I think is super helpful. Some of you probably already know about the college essay guy. He's great. He's national, and he has a lot of free resources. So he does have some paid things, but he also has a bunch of free resources. So I feel comfortable with some of his free stuff. Kind of, you can share some of that free stuff with students. So definitely you can check that out. And then on our site, we have the CFNC resume builder. That's great because it's kind of a portfolio, right? So students can add to it, have a little resume, and then they can, keep adding to it, make another resume from that information. So it basically pulls from those portfolios. So that can be really useful if you don't know where students can find a free, kind of pretty good resume builder. Also, we have a lot of information. Obviously, we have a scholarship search. We have a page dedicated to understanding scholarships and grants. And on that page, there is actually a how to find scholarships webinar. So we didn't talk about that today, but that's one of the common questions, right? And we know that a lot of the time, I would say almost 90% of the time that students spend on scholarships is trying to find them, right? So, if we can give them some guidance, provide them some direction, that's great. And then there's a bunch of mapping your future resources that have recently come out. You can see on the screen, there's a screenshot of their winning scholarship strategies sort of overview. And so that breaks it down into some basic steps. So if you like that, that's linked on their site. That's linked here. They've also got some slides from a recent scholarship webinar that they did, if there's anything in there that's useful for you. It has some information about FAFSA, financial aid, general stuff, but I don't think it's anything harmful. I think the more students can hear about that stuff, the better, right? And then, of course, if the students are trying to keep track of all those scholarships, they have a scholarship tracking tool, right? And on that, it's like an Excel spreadsheet. So it has the tracking tool. It also has, for what you're applying to, it's got a page for what did I receive and what do I need to follow up on, right? What do I need to do next to make sure I get that money in the bank or, at the school? And then it's also got a tab for comparing college financial aid, so what is it going to really cost from college to college? So there's a lot of good opportunities there. And then I just kind of tacked on that, something that I think I didn't realize until the last couple of years is that there are study abroad scholarships. And so I really think that that is such a worthwhile opportunity. And I think a lot of students, particularly low income students, think that that's not in their reach, right? And so I really want to make sure you know that there are study abroad scholarships. There's more than just this one, but this is the one through like the Department of Defense, like the one that across the US. And I actually know a student at A&T that got that one. So I know actual students that got it. So I feel pretty good about sharing that one. And that's about it for me, I think. Yeah, so thanks so much. I hope that was useful. And like I said, if you have anything to share in the chat, please, we're always looking for new ideas.
Yes. Thank you so much, Devon. That was very useful. And even working with students, up to the scholarship process for, almost for a long time now, there's still a few tips that I wrote down that are things that I definitely had never thought of before, and got a couple of good ideas for. So thank you so much. I do believe that was very helpful, even for those that are on that are a little bit seasoned, and definitely for those that are on that are new, that are helping students, recently, just kind of new to helping students through the scholarship process. I do want to ask, just as Devon said, as we finish up the last 5 or 6 minutes here, if you have any ideas or things that you would love to see highlighted in the spotlight as a topic in these, please feel free to put it in the chat. Don't forget that you have your regional representative team if you need anything. If for some reason you've tried to reach out to Juana recently, she is still on maternity leave with her sweet little bundle of joy. She'll be back in a month, 5 weeks-ish. And again, a big thank you to Devon for joining us today. A couple things I want to go over before we exit today. One is, as far as the chat goes, okay, I would really love for us to do more with talking with each other in some of these virtual coffee hours. Virtual coffee, 45 minutes. So in the chat, definitely, if you have any, burning ideas, we have some things that we're going to do through June, and then we're planning on taking July off from this, and folks will kind of be, dispersed in July, and then we'll kick back up in August. But if you have any thoughts about future ideas for these, feel free to put it in the chat. Also, what do you all have coming up? Do you have something related to scholarships or not? Could be completely unrelated that you have coming up in your office, in your school, in your district, in your community, that you're excited about, that you think, I'm going to celebrate this, I'm going to brag about it. Do it, right? We are sometimes told bragging maybe isn't the best thing. This environment is a good thing. Letting others know. We love to borrow ideas from each other. If you've got something going on in your district that you're really proud of, that you feel like you've kind of hit the nail on the head, share it. Maybe another district hasn't thought of it and could use it with their families and students. We all have the same goal here of helping our students through the career, college process, paying for it, all of those things. So feel free to put it in the chat. I also want to highlight next month, we have a program. It's always the second Wednesday second Wednesday of the month, October, second Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. So next month, March 13th, we have a focus on NC careers and resources, and we'll have Jamie Vaughn join us. He's the Senior Analyst for Marketing Intelligence at the NC Department of Commerce. And we, as you guys know, I'm sure, we have a great partnership with Department of Commerce and with NC Careers with all their wonderful career resources. And that is going to be close to St. Patrick's Day hence the St. Patrick's Day Cup. So, like I said, feel free to put anything in the chat that you have coming up. We hope to see you for other virtual coffee breaks. Hopefully these are short and sweet and informative. That is the goal with that. We are very good at CFNC providing long webinars. They're very informative, extremely informative. So we were just trying to do something a little short and sweet. We have a great comment in the chat from Ms. Maria Garcia Ortega. We have a Fast Night tomorrow night that she's helping to host in Spanish and in English. And she's just so happy to be able to help Spanish-speaking families. It's healed her heart when you dollars 5 years ago. That is so good. Yeah, I have really noticed, even on FAFSA Day this year, if you guys were heading out to some FAFSA Day locations, there was a lot of assistance, bilingual assistance. I know that we saw, we were, myself and Devon and Kate and Tequila, who's on, we were at different locations. And I think Brittany might have called in too. We were at different locations helping, and we saw a lot of bilingual assistance across the state this year. And so that is extremely exciting. And yes, definitely does warm our hearts. So thank you so much for sharing that, Maria. This is a good time for us to just throw stuff out there. But I don't want to keep anybody any longer than necessary. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. And Michelle Sims, who is with Guilford County Schools. We got that. Michelle, she's got a flyer in there about spring into FAFSA. She's doing in conjunction, I'm sure, with Tequila, who's on. And then they have, the Guilford County Schools has a great partnership with ShiftEd also that they do work with, and it's a community organization. So they're really, really good. We have utilized Michelle and Guilford County Schools and ShiftEd before, and talking a little bit about best practices for how we can partner with community organizations to help our students. So they're doing good things also. And I'm sure Michelle would not mind if anyone wanted to reach out to her and pick her brain about some stuff. So thank you again. We hope that you join us next month for our next virtual coffee 45-minute program here. And yeah, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it. And we will send out a recording of this to everyone. And I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks, everybody.